All right, so that common denominator is z plus 3, z minus 1. So what we're going to do is we are going to build two fractions that have that same denominator. Okay, so section 8.5 was finding the LCD, and then section 8.6 is building those equivalent fractions. So what's missing in the first one? To get this denominator, z minus 1. So we're going to have to multiply z minus 1 over z minus 1. But guess what was already there? A z minus 1. So we need to keep what's there. Now you could go over here and say I'm multiplying by z minus 1 over z minus 1. But if you show it, you have to show it to both the top and the bottom. Okay? What do we have to multiply the z plus 3 that's on the top of the second one by?
Z plus 3.
Yeah, z plus 3. Good. And then what we're going to have to do is FOIL these. And before I combine them over a common denominator, I'm going to FOIL them separately just because we can make some errors. Where do you think the error could come in? All these today are going to have a subtraction sign. What error do you think we tend to make? Forgetting to change the signs. Yep. You had one on the homework like this, so it was kind of similar. Now, this subtraction means we have invisible parentheses that are sitting around that z squared plus 6z plus 9. So that minus sign, we have to make sure we distribute. And then the numerator now has big parentheses around it, so we're trying to combine like terms. When we have it as simple as possible, it's going to be nice and factored. It's going to be a single fraction that's factored completely. Now sometimes the answers will multiply them back out, but you have to factor them anyways to see if anything cancels. So I just leave it factored because it's kind of a cleaner, simpler way to look at it. So we're adding and subtracting from section 4, and then every problem becomes a section 2 problem, which says, hey, see if it simplifies any further. Okay. Any questions on any step of that? Because it's the identical process to what we did Wednesday. They just get a little bit more difficult. And we're going to see that on the next one. The next one's probably as hard as it gets, okay, with the ones we're going to do. What do we have to do to both of the denominators? Factor, AC grouping, right? Now, this is going to take some space, so I wouldn't do your AC grouping here. I would go to the top, okay, and do your AC grouping. So see if you can factor at the top in the margin each of those. This is just practicing your AC grouping. And then once we get that, then we'll put it back in. And I'll put up the AC grouping that I did for this one to see if you're getting the same thing. Okay, did you get it? Did you get those factored? And did you FOIL to check? Okay, the first one is x plus 4, 2x plus 3. The second, 2x plus 3, x minus 1. So you can see how factoring becomes a small part of a problem. It took some time, but now it's a smaller part of the problem. So what is our LCD? Yes, so all these, this is an x plus 4, so just make sure our signs are the same. X plus 4, 2x plus 3, and x minus 1. Okay, cool. So we are going to take and build equivalent fractions that have that LCD. Now the process is identical to what we did Wednesday, but like I said, it's just a little longer. So remember, this one factored into x plus 4, 2x plus 3, and this one to 2x plus 3, x minus 1. Because then we can compare them. What's missing on the first one? An x minus 1. There's already an x minus 1 on the top. They're not always going to be the same. We're just seeing a couple that are. And then what's missing on the second one? X plus 4. Okay, so go ahead and FOIL the first two, FOIL the last two, and then remember there are big parentheses to see if you can, now it becomes like the last problem, see if you can simplify it all the way. I'll put up the work so you can check it as you go, but let me know if you are stumped. Anyone stuck? Anyone have questions? We're okay? It's a little bit longer, isn't it? They take a little longer, but the process is really the same. The key is when you FOIL those, make sure you did it right. So, or when you factor those, FOIL them back out, because if those are incorrect, then, the rest of it gets messed up. So my final answer is negative 4x plus 9 over x minus 1, x plus 4, 2x plus 3. Any questions?
So what was your answer again?
Negative 4x plus 9 over that LCD. You could factor out a negative if you wanted to and do negative quantity 4x minus 9. That wouldn't be wrong either. Okay? Everyone okay? Move on to the third one. Because what's different in the third one? It's subtraction and division. So if you threw this into your calculator, 5 minus 7 divided by 2, guess what the calculator automatically knows what to do first? The division. It's like, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally, says you're reading through an expression. If you are doing multiplying and dividing, that's going to come first. So it's going to take 7 divided by 2, and then it's going to take 5 minus that answer. So in our example 3, where could we put parentheses? Where could we put parentheses? Where do they exist even though you don't see them? Around the division? Okay, so what do we have to do first? The division, right? Now we can't leave off, it would be called a linking error, so we can't leave off the first part, but we're going to do minus, and then we are just going to work in these parentheses. So we have some things to factor. Luckily, they're easier than factoring the ones in the last problem. In division, we change to multiplication, and we have to flip or invert that divisor. And before we even think of subtracting, we have to get this all cleaned up, okay? So see if you can do that division. And get to that point. And then it becomes a problem just like example 1. So I want you to go ahead and finish it, just practicing what we did Wednesday and today to see if you have that process down pretty well. And I'll put up the work so you can check to see if you're getting it. How'd you do? Okay. Right, as you're finishing, we're going to go into the packets, which we're going to go over the homework. But if you're done with this while people are still working on it, you may want to go to the templates in the pink packet on 12E, and I wrote up the problem so you don't have to keep flipping back and forth. So I would jot those down just so that you have them. So I'll give you a couple minutes when you're finished with that just to work on it. And then the last thing we have to do is go over the homework from Wednesday. Okay? In tonight's homework, it says on your assignment sheet to do 30 to 46 the even. We're going to do 30 to 42. Okay, so those last two we'll probably do next week. Did you get a chance to write them down? Okay. And then they'll be on the board, so I think everyone should be done with this one now. So let's go over the homework from Wednesday so we can make sure you are in good shape before I set you loose on these new problems. So 12, I think the first set was like 12. You were doing this in your, wherever your notebook was, the 2 to 12 even. Let's go over any questions you have on that set before we do the ones in the template. Did any of those stump you? Any from 2 to 12 even? No? We're in good shape? Okay. So then let's look at the next part, which was the 14 to 28. I'm sure we have some there that we need. Any from 14 to 28? Did anyone have a presentation for today? Oh, you do? No. Okay, so I didn't give them out. So you just tell me, why don't we just go through and I'll say a number and then if you need it, we'll look at it, okay? Does anyone need 14? That sorted okay? Started off pretty good, right? 16. Does anyone need that one? That one wasn't too bad either? Okay. How about 18? Sure. Okay, so let's give that one a look. 18, if I can find mine. Here we go. Part of the problem I had on this, they use m's, so this was different. But if there's not a denominator, we assume it is 1, right? So this is m over 1. So the LCD is m and m minus 4. So I have 3 fractions that I need to build. So m over 1, 3 over m, and minus 2 over m minus 4. I want to look like m times m minus 4. So the first fraction is missing everything. So I have to multiply by m minus 4 over m minus 4. The second one's just missing the m minus 4, multiply the top and bottom. Third one, m over m. And then we get that all over that common denominator. So we can add and subtract all those numerators, distribute what we need to, combine like terms, and it didn't factor any further, so we were done. Questions on 18? Anyone need 20? That one was okay too? Kind of bounce back and forth. It seems like there would be kind of one that was harder and then one that was not as bad. 22. Does anyone need that one? And once we get to some of these harder problems, using the solutions online can be real helpful. Just to see, like, if you're making a mistake, trying to really identify and pinpoint where you're making it so that it helps you the next time. Definitely want to look at 24. Did you recognize they were opposites? If you didn't, you may have gotten the right answer, but you did a lot more work, didn't you? Because if you recognize these are opposites, you can factor out a -1 out of the second denominator. So now the problem is just 7 over n minus 5 plus 2 over n minus 5, or 9 over n minus 5. If you did n minus 5 and 5 minus n, you could still work it out, but you had some simplifying to do. We okay there? All right, 26. How did that one go? Do you get the LCD to be x minus 4, x plus 4? This is like example 1 that we did today. Did you remember that there were parentheses around that last trinomial? So the x squareds cancel out. If your x squareds didn't cancel out, you forgot to distribute that minus. And then you get 16x because the 16s also cancel out. Any problems? Okay, so 28 was the hardest one, right? All right, so 28, look to see, did you factor the first denominator as a times the quantity b minus a? Second one, b times the quantity a minus b. Now, what do you recognize about b minus a and a minus b? They are opposites. So I'm going to do the same exact thing I did with all the opposite problems. I go to the second fraction, factor out a -1, and now I have -b times b minus a. Now my LCD is easier. It's the actual least common denominator. It's a, b, and b minus a. So the first fraction's missing a b, so I'm going to multiply by b over b. The second one's missing an a, so I'll multiply by a over a. Plus a negative makes that problem subtraction. And then we get b squared minus a squared over that common denominator. But are we finished? We are not, are we? Because then we can factor out that b squared minus a squared. The b minus a's cancel out, and you'll get your answer. So that one was definitely the toughest one of that bunch because it combined the opposites with more LCDs, more parts of the LCD. Any questions? Okay, so we have a little bit more time than we had first period, which is fine. I'm just going to give you the rest of the period because we didn't get last period to going over the quiz or talking about that in-class assignment that you did. So we'll do that next week. So why don't you take the last, 10 minutes and work on some of the problems. 30 to 42 is all we're going to do. The evens, I have them written on the board. You're going to write them in your templates on pages 12E through H, and then go ahead and work, okay? Final answers are in the packet, and then full solutions are on Blackboard.